Hello, you beautiful, magical soul. Today, I am so excited to share with you a podcast interview that I got to do with the Cocktail Hour, Women Shaking Shit Up in Business, with Erin Folk of Lily and James Creative. And in this podcast, we talk about how to live your inspired purpose, how your purpose and your passions go together in your daily life, and how to be heart happy. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hello and welcome to the Cocktail Hour with me, your host, Erin Folk. The Cocktail Hour is a place where we celebrate the women in business who are shaking shit up. This week, we are talking about how to be heart happy. How can your passion and your work thrive together? Today we have Sarrah Chapman with Soul Abundance IQ, who will help us answer those questions. Thanks for joining us, Sarrah.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited you're here. I've been trying to tell my team kind of some of the stuff that we've done, and you're going to say it much better. They're going to get it once you talk about it. They're not really getting it with me, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's a lot to explain. Yeah. So, yeah.
You just come off much better with it. So, before we jump into today's topic, let's see who is shaking shit up this week. So, the Shake is the part of the show where we highlight a few amazing women, nationally and locally, that are shaking shit up, making great moves in business and creating a better world with their passion. So did Christian send you over this link we're going to talk about?
She did.
Perfect. So you had a chance to read it?
Yeah.
So this link is from entrepreneurial.com, and Christian will attach it when we launch this. But it is about Haley Hoffman, who had founded a nonprofit and then went into business with a for-profit with, I believe it was her CFO that she went into business with, and kind of gets into having a business partner and some of the struggles. So a little bit about my story. I don't know if you know this, but I did start this business with a business partner. A lot of people at this point don't remember that. I honestly already owned the URL, already owned everything, it's named after my kids. But I was just too scared to take that jump and do it on my own. So I started this with a business partner, and it was about maybe right around a year. It started dwindling way before that, but right around a year before we did the legalities of separating ways, and I paid her a nice chunk of money. I say to go away. And it's weird. That was a very emotional time. Luckily, I had a wonderful attorney, still have a wonderful attorney who also happens to be a girlfriend, but in that business mode, she could really check me out of my emotions. And my business partner and I would still say we're very friendly with each other. We obviously don't hang out, but we never did before. But we still, when I got engaged, she sent me a congratulations and stuff like that. So I want your take on this, because you have kind of two different things going on, right? You've kind of got your own thing, and then you've got something you're trying to start with a business partner. So what are your takes on when if somebody were to walk up to you and say, hey, should I get a business partner? What would your answer be?
Yeah. I think, you really have to be very discerning with who you're going into business with. And the story about this woman, she was 18 when she started this business. She was super young, and she even says part of the reason that she was like, well, I'll do it with this business partner because she's older than I am. She knows what she's doing. She has the investment capital. And I think it's so easy, especially for women, to feel like we can't do it alone. Yeah. I have another business with a business partner, Mackie Musavi, that you've interviewed as well.
Yeah, she's on a couple weeks ago.
And, it's amazing, but we are very upfront with each other all the time.
Yeah. How did you guys meet?
We actually met when we were in coaching together.
Okay. So not friends really before?
No.
Okay. I think that can be a big difference, right?
Probably. Yeah. And I would say, she's one of my very best friends now, but yeah, we met in more of a professional capacity. It wasn't like, oh, we've been high school friends and now we're going to do this thing. Right. And not that there's anything wrong with that. There just has to be that separation of, the emotional piece, and while still following and listening to yourself, but being just very discerning and really allowing the space to look at anything that comes up that, we're going to talk about everything and put it all out on the table before we start anything.
Do you have very defined roles in that business?
We really do. And it's kind of just worked out naturally for us. And we're really good at sharing responsibilities and stepping into, what we're both good at. But I really just think the fact that we talk about everything helps a lot. Yeah.
Could you see yourself ever going into business with like your husband or a family member? I'll just tell you right now, no. My answer, my father and mother work for me in capacities. They do not work in the office. People think that they either funded my business or I'm in partnership with them. That is not the case. But them not even being in the office, but working for me is hard enough. So I know very clearly that my answer is no. So your answer is
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Probably not. It would just depend. I could go into business with my husband depending on what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, just
most
likely not.
I have a hard enough time with my fiance. He owns a business, and I have a hard enough time just keeping my mouth shut and telling him how to run his business, right?
Right.
So, I can't imagine if we worked together.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be together much longer. In all honesty, it would be 100% my fault, but at least I know that about myself. So, okay, well, let's get into some stuff. I'm really excited for the team and everyone listening to kind of get to know you and your story. I guess, you know what, I want to touch on a little bit. You said when you first walked in today that you were kind of excited about the shake part of our podcast because it was relating. So obviously I said, well, tell me it's not relating to you and your business. What parts of it did you relate to?
Yeah. So, I mean, she went through this experience when she dissolved that piece of her business with her business partner of like, oh, I don't know if I'll do this ever again. And I really feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have to go through challenges like that. So right now I'm rolling out some new projects and I'm doing some things I've never done before. And I really think there's this piece where as an entrepreneur, you're always called to keep moving forward, and it can be really, really scary. And so just facing those challenges and moving through it anyway, that's definitely where I'm at right now. I think visibility is a big issue for a lot of people, whether they recognize it or not. Yeah. Just really allowing the space for all the shit to come up, to come out is really important.
I think once you let go of that, there's usually success follows.
Absolutely. I think success always follows, and her whole thing about following her heart and her passion, and is that going to make her successful? Yeah. I mean, I believe we're always successful when we follow, just that natural guidance within us to what we're meant to do.
So do you believe that there's a certain time that you should know? Should it just be your intuition when you're feeling like you should let go of something? But what about if you're passionate about it? Like, how then do you convince yourself to listen to your intuition?
Right. Well, I think it can be wrapped up with a lot of things. There's a lot of programming and conditioning. I went through an experience where I was going to work with a woman and all these just very subtle clues kept coming up, and I kept kind of just like, oh, no, that can't be right. Surely this is the right thing. And it was not. It was a huge learning experience. And so
you didn't learn that it was the wrong thing?
Yeah. So I think, it can be kind of difficult sometimes to really listen to ourselves. And that's why, I'm a huge believer of meditation, whatever that looks like for anyone, because it can look very different.
How does it look? Give us a couple examples of how you think it looks different. Because when I hear meditation, I think, so I don't do meditation currently. Sure. Because I just can't stop. I can't stop long enough to go,
Right.
And I'm not coordinated and all of that. So I just have just skipped over this whole meditation thing. So what do you mean by you think that looks different for different people?
Yeah, it doesn't have to look like and all of that. I think sitting down and breathing is really important. A lot of times just dropping our shoulders and taking a deep breath a few times a day is really, really helpful. I do a lot of walking meditation. So just walking and then trying to pay attention to how many birds do I hear, or kind of tuning out of my own head and, those running thoughts all the time. I'm really into grounding. So I think working with grounding energy, whether that's tuning into chakras or Mother Earth or whatever that looks like to different people. And sometimes it can just be putting on your favorite song and dancing around.
Oh, I could probably get down with that.
Yeah.
That might be my kind of meditation.
Yeah.
Talking about
move some stuff, move some energy and shake it up.
What about yoga?
Yoga's great when it fits for you.
Oh, it does not fit for me.
And that's okay.
I'm the girl falling over in yoga. Like, I am so concerned more in yoga if I'm going to fall over than, like, it is so more stressful than, I guess, relaxing. It's supposed to be relaxing, I hear.
Right.
So stressful.
Yeah. And I think that happens a lot to people where there's this, like, oh, am I doing it right? And everybody's looking at me and judging me.
Everybody else looks like an expert.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're in a good yoga class, it should be a sacred container of where nobody is looking at you and judging you. And they're all like, hey, just show up and be yourself and do the best you can. We all started somewhere,
Do you
right?
think that's mostly in my head?
Yeah.
None of them are actually looking at me.
Probably not.
I have another really successful girlfriend that she kind of is perfect at everything. And at some point she said she was terrible at yoga. And so I felt like we were bonding. And so, but she felt the same way. And she's kind of that person I look at that's like Miss Perfection, right? And so it's just something probably, do you think we just struggle with that anyways as women?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we are always measuring ourselves against somebody else's measuring stick. And what is that really? You know?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we're going to get into talking about you, all right?
Okay.
So let me read this bio they gave me on you. Sarrah Chapman experienced the divorce of her parents as a child and always played the role of peacekeeper at the expense of her own feelings. This led her to suicidal thoughts and depression that followed her for years. Over time, she found herself settling for a normal life, a corporate job and a social life, but it just wasn't enough. Sarrah eventually listened to the voices of her soul and decided to be true to herself. She now specializes in helping entrepreneurs find their gifts, their purpose, and recognize what makes them unique. She uses her secret advantage system to assist her clients in learning to apply their distinctive gifts in business and move beyond all that's blocking them from creating the fullest expression of themselves. Sarrah's received a bachelor's degree in business management and worked in corporate sales and marketing before leaving to start her own business and follow her lifelong passions of energy work, natural therapies, and spiritual practice. All right, so let's just get into it because I think people are probably kind of like I was when I met you. Mm-hmm. And what is this secret advantage system and how do you go from corporate to now you're going to read energies and kind of explain what that looked like, how you got there, and what your life looks like now?
Yeah. So the very first thing I want to say about it is, you know, when you hear, oh, somebody reads energy, it can be very esoteric or mysterious, or, you know, it can trigger a lot of different thoughts, right? And so I always encourage people just to be open.
Okay.
Just take a deep breath and be open, because even if it's not your thing, you might still hear something that resonates and helps you on your journey, right? So I, you know, always, just like the bio said, you know, I was always the peacekeeper. I always tried to take care of everybody else before myself.
How old were you when your parents got
I was 2.
Okay.
And
so it's pretty much all you remember.
Yeah. They fought all the time. And, you know, I was always in the middle of it. And
were you an only child?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, that just programmed and conditioned me to kind of stuff my own stuff down and take care of everybody else, make sure mom and dad are okay, and who cares what I really feel or think.
Do you think had they not fought, I asked this because I've got a daughter who we know she's playing the Peacekeeper, but we get along very, very well. But I think it's just naturally what comes in that situation, right?
Right.
Do you think had they not fought, you still would have put yourself in that situation of trying to be the peacekeeper?
I probably would have, because I'm already designed for that. And I think every gift, because every person has a set of unique gifts, and every gift has a positive and a negative side. And so I was already wired for that, and it was just being expressed in, you know, not the highest form that it could be.
What's the negative side of that gift?
So again, it is putting everybody else first, not having clear boundaries, letting everybody else walk all over you, not using your words, not speaking up for what you want, just maybe modeling what you want. Like, before I really started tuning into this and really doing deep work on this, it would be like me cleaning the house and hoping my husband would notice. And so he'd clean the house more, right? No, he'd just be like, oh, the house looks great. Thanks, hon.
Yeah.
And
Good point.
yeah. So, I mean,
a little opposite of my house. I think my boyfriend's doing, or fiance's doing what you're doing.
You have different gifts than I do. So
yeah, she's read my gifts. They're very opposite. But I like when the house is clean. It never makes me think I should clean.
Right. Yeah. It's like, hey, thanks for taking care of everything. Right. I feel very supported. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So you took that in. What does your life look like if your parents didn't divorce and you have that gift? Have you ever thought that through?
Oh no, that's a great question. I'm sure there would have still been some sort of old bullshit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we all go through challenges, kind of like coal being pressed into a diamond, right?
Yeah.
So that we can overcome and try to find those better pieces of ourselves, I think.
Yeah.
Not that I think every child has to go through trauma and dysfunction to get there. But
it's just interesting that because you do this work, you track it all the way back to being 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where I wondered. Okay, so your parents get divorced, you play Peacekeeper.
Yeah. I had depression my entire life, suicidal thoughts, a lot of drinking issues, drug use. And I was always kind of living in these very two different worlds.
What do you mean by your entire life? 'Cause you're still young.
Yeah, I mean, when I was probably in 6th grade is when I had my first suicidal, I could make this plan this way, right?
Yeah, like thoughts and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me because yesterday we talked with someone and we really got into a conversation about how bad suicide is right now. I struggled with suicidal thoughts young as well. I think in the media they're saying, they're just putting on this, I don't know if there's more awareness of it or if it's happening more. We kind of had this conversation yesterday, so I want to get your feedback on it. Do you think that suicidal thoughts are increasing and suicide attempts and, unfortunately, suicide, I guess, successes, I don't want to use that word, but when it actually works as well, that those are increasing or that there's just more awareness around it now? Because 6th grade, this was in the 80s, right? 80s.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about now, right? People are saying they're getting younger, but that's the age they're getting. And you struggled with it, and I struggled with it.
Yeah.
So do you think the awareness is just higher now, or what are your thoughts?
I mean, without being an expert on it, I would guess, that it's both.
Okay.
That, there's so much more awareness, but at the same time, I think there's so much more. I love technology. I love screen time, but I think it does lend itself to creating more anxiousness in people because we're not having the space to just breathe and be with ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I could definitely see how there's a little bit more pressure nowadays and that could lend itself to both. Yeah.
Did you ever attempt suicide?
No.
Just thoughts?
Just lots of thoughts. I was bulimic in high school, so just lots of hating myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you went to college?
I went to college, partied a lot. And
I'm guessing you grew up in a small town near me, so I'm guessing that part started in high school.
Yeah. Yeah, it did.
And field parties.
Absolutely.
Good times.
Yep.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and then that went over to college and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really did live in these two worlds of drinking and socializing. And then I would also go to these, I went to K-State and there was like community university, or I think it was like University for Mankind, and they had all these community classes. And so I would go to all these self-help classes like Tai Chi and acupressure classes, and they were all full of adults who had stable jobs and weren't smoking weed every night, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was this really weird
Yeah.
paradox that I was in.
Like you're self-sabotaging while you were trying to help yourself.
Yeah. I would go smoke a pack of cigarettes a day and then hold my ring finger for my lung point to have better lung function, right? You know, instead of like, oh, just not smoking anymore and getting out of the little self-constructed prison I was in. So that took a while for me to really work through.
Okay.
So, after that, I went to the corporate world and I worked for a great little company. My husband still works there.
What industry?
It's engineering for rural water and wastewater, industrial side.
Okay. Is that where you met your husband?
Yeah.
Okay. Just didn't know. Good together. Okay.
And I loved it. I loved the people there. I learned a lot there, but it still was very I was living in somebody else's box, putting on the mask of like being a certain person. And they were still very accepting. They all called me Little Mother Earth because I would bring in my essential oils every day and all that, right?
Yeah.
But it just still was not who I was meant to be. So I finally left. I went to massage school and, you know, really enjoyed that as well. But I was just seeing people come back, you know, session after session, not really making any changes, not doing any of the homework that I would send with them, and just not making any progress towards what they would say their goals were. And I've always had this energetic side of me, you know, of reading energy. And so I finally went to an actual certification for that and studied that. So
can you elaborate on what
absolutely.
reading energy is? Okay.
Absolutely. So, you know, everything is energy. That's science. Now, I mean, you can Google science, everything is energy, right? So they talk about how like this table in front of us is really just energy compressed into matter. Okay. And so there's really a vibration to everything. And so I am just reading where someone is now versus where they want to go and what's the vibrational landscape in between to get them there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. How do you read that?
That's a really good question.
Thank you. It's my job.
That's a really in-depth answer.
Okay.
So I will just say, you know, I did this certification course and I am accessing a field of consciousness.
Okay.
I know that sounds super mysterious and esoteric. We basically have these different dimensions. And again, science and physics talks about dimensions. Yeah. So, you know, this physical dimension is the third dimension. Then we have the fourth dimension, which is the level of thought and emotion. And our thoughts literally take on substance.
Okay.
And that's actually a public realm. So when we were primal humans, we used to read each other at that level to see, you know, oh, I see some guy coming across the field with an axe. Has he been chopping firewood or is he coming to destroy the tribe, right? So we used to use that all the time. And we still do. We're just not conscious of it and really aware that we're, you know, I heard one of my favorite comedians one time was talking about when his girlfriend would get mad, she would like release this piss mist, right? And he could just feel her get mad. That's the fourth dimension.
Okay.
So we've all had experiences like that where you can just feel somebody else's feelings.
Yeah.
And then beyond that is the fifth dimension and beyond. And that's a really private, realm of your energy. And so I only read that by having my client's permission.
Okay.
And that's really where I'm accessing where, you know, you want to go this place with your business or with your relationship or with your finances or your marketing or sale. Like you can really read any of it. And that's where that information comes through to get a really good picture of, oh, you're here. Well, you need to make these changes and tweaks to get there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, you've done it to me though. So that it does make sense to me. And it was like, in my very layman's terms, it was so weird because I was like, wait, how did she know that? So I'm a believer. I do agree with you where there's people probably pushing back, listening, going, wait a minute. I think you called it in our thing, all this woo-woo.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yep, I sure did.
Woo-woo. When a client comes to you, because I think this is very interesting. So you usually work with people in executive positions.
I do,
right?
Yeah.
And my understanding, and so tell me if I'm wrong, is that it's people that have reached a certain point and they're trying to figure out why I'm still not completely happy and what's going on because I've checked all the boxes I'm supposed to. And that's where you really get into this. How many people, you said when you were doing the massages, people weren't going home and doing their homework and stuff like that. When somebody comes to you how many people buy in and how many people actually do what you ask of them, and what do those results look like?
Yeah. So I would say a lot of the people that come to me are open.
Okay.
And even if learning about energy isn't their thing, that doesn't have to be their thing. That's my role. So they're at least open to it and they get something out of it. And most of the people who come to me, they're going to do the homework because they're invested in making these changes in their lives. And they see dramatic changes just by doing the homework that I give them. And so I have one woman that doubled her income. Oh, wow. A lot of people, move forward with their income
because this is just stuff they're not conscious of.
Absolutely.
That you're bringing to the forefront.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of people really drop the limiting beliefs and stories that they're telling each other or telling themselves. So they start to see more connection in their relationships, or, oh, actually, I do have time for myself to go get a massage, or I can take care of myself in these ways. And some of the heaviness and burdens of life start to diminish.
To kind of break down those walls.
Absolutely.
Did you do this for yourself to help with your depression?
Yeah, I was
happen to that?
Pretty much through it by then. But
how did you get past it?
I think just a lot of personal development, a lot of meditation. I've meditated since I was in high school. I didn't know that's what I was doing necessarily, but I've kind of done that for so long. I've just always tuned in to what I need to move forward and done it, even when it's scary. But I do use this work for myself all the time.
Okay. And do you have the ability to turn it off? Like if you don't want to read energy, or you said you only will do that for your clients in I think it was the 5th dimension. Do you have the ability to turn it off, or is it something that's almost kind of like, this is a very stupid example.
No, this is
I know
a great
when somebody
question.
has terrible marketing, right?
Right.
And it drives me crazy if I see a really bad logo. And they're not my client. Maybe they're in California or something, but I know it's a really bad logo.
Right.
And it kind of like irks me.
Yeah.
Do you have the ability to turn it off, or are you just constantly?
I would say I'm always picking up on things like that, just, but I'm not going around and like reading people all the time. I'm not, because
I would think that would be exhausting.
Yeah, it would be. And it's not okay to read people's energy, especially at the 5th dimension without their permission. That's not acceptable.
Okay.
And I'm not, because a lot of people will be like, oh, are you reading me right now? Are you reading my thought? No. That's not what I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is a soul story?
So when I'm reading this energy, there's really this whole soul profile of all the different parts and pieces that make up how a person is built at soul level.
Okay.
And again, these are my terms. And for whatever belief system anybody comes from, they can use their own terms.
Okay.
It's kind of all the same thing.
Yeah.
Just my lens of it is the soul profile. So if it's okay to use you as an example.
Yeah, that's fine.
We read what are your main energies. And so Erin has a lot of communication energy, a lot of truth energy. Yeah. I mean, she's really living a lot of what she's here to bring, right? And so we really look
How
at...
oftentimes are people living what they're here to bring when you sit down with them?
Most of the time, I would probably say 75% of the time.
Do you think it's because you're meeting with people that are in that exact position, so they've had to be successful?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. There are still times where we're living, our parents' expectations or what we think we need to work on, that whole well, work on your weaknesses and get better at what you're not good at, when it's well, really, that's just you hitting your head against the wall all the time instead of just going with what's naturally.
What you're good at.
Yeah.
Okay. So finish. I'm good at communication and truth.
Yeah.
I'm going to be real blunt and honest with you.
That's exactly right. Well, and even
And tell you.
even on your website, you have something to that effect of we're not going to tell you what you want to hear. We're going to tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly what you're here to bring to people. And so even if that doesn't make everybody happy, that's how you're here to serve people.
So let's get back to where you said, let's make this full circle, where you said, so those are my strengths, but there's double sides to all of those. Can you use those two as an example of how those same gifts can be used against you?
Absolutely. So, and I'm not saying you're doing this.
Oh, it's fine. I really am.
So, with the gift of truth, a lot of times people can get very black and white with that and get a little bit judgmental, instead of remembering that my truth is not your truth, is not somebody else's truth. It's all through your personal lens. Or with the gift of communication, sometimes people can talk without listening or be preaching to the choir, instead of actually finding the people who want to hear your message.
Yeah. Okay.
And those are just two very small snippets of the rest of how you're built. Yeah.
So are those two things my soul story, or what is the full picture of the soul story?
That is a piece of it. So then we also have, so some of your other gifts were working in technology and being somebody who's all inclusive and bringing a tribe together. And those were kind of your, the label in what I do is planetary gifts. And then there's also what I call the soul blueprint. And these are, and I'm really reading how aligned on a spectrum from 0 to 100 are you more similar? Are you more contrast? Well, if you're more similar, you're trying to look at how you're like other people. If you're more contrast, you're looking at how you're different. And so we're reading spectrums of all these different comparatives of how you're built to operate.
Now, you also believe that past lives play into who we are today, right?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we're just talking about you. We don't have anyone else on here today. And I will tell you, I found it very interesting. Now, I went and told a couple people, and they said, I want to sell you some ice, right? Or something like that. I want from, clearly I'm not good at communicating that portion of it. I want you to kind of get into why you believe that past lives play into who we are and how we use that to become better in this life.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, and I will say I come from a very Christian background. So I know that's not everybody's belief system. I just personally believe that God is the ultimate recycler and that our
Christian like that.
Good. that really, I mean, God, creator, source, universe, whatever your term is, wants us to have more and more experiences because it expands our souls, it expands the universe. And so why wouldn't we experience everything there is to experience? Because our souls really don't label it necessarily as good or bad. So, we've had experiences of being kings and queens and being paupers and trauma or, riches. We've had all these different experiences within our souls just to learn more.
Okay, I have a question. It's gonna be tricky. And I had not thought about this until just now. Do you think that both God is recycling as well as bringing new souls? Because isn't world population higher now than ever? So that would lead to that not all souls have been around as long as other souls, right?
On this earth, yes.
On this earth. Okay, then what is your belief system? Like, do you have a belief system of how many lives you have here or what?
I think it just varies from soul to
many
soul,
lessons,
and whether, I mean, there could be other planets that sustain life.
That's true.
There, that we're just not aware of. There could be, other dimensions,
What is
whatever
your
that
belief, though?
source energy. I definitely believe that our souls have been to other planets, and I don't fully, I'm not all knowing by any means.
No, this is all your opinion. Yeah, absolutely.
But I definitely believe that our souls are hanging out in other etheric dimensions. And
so we have a girl in the office that every time we feel like it's kind of a crazy week around here, she usually pulls in what's going on with the planets, right? She's very much down your path. I'm surprised she's not in here right now. I think they had her on a photo shoot. Otherwise, she'd be like sitting right here. We recently had a few weeks in a row that were just like, what the heck is going on? And of course, she's like, duh, guys, Mercury's in retrograde, right? I'm guessing that you are right down that path, that you believe where the planets are does affect energy.
yeah, absolutely. I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you able to prepare for when your life's going to be crazy because of that?
Yeah, I think it just gives us more knowledge, more awareness to roll with it.
So when you're more aware of it, do you believe it's still just as crazy? You're just like, eh?
Yeah, it's still just as crazy, but just having the awareness that like this is happening for your benefit because there's positives to Mercury in retrograde or whatever it
What are
is,
the
right?
positives? Because she never tells us that. Tell us those positives.
It's a great time to review, revisit anything, reconstruct. It's a great time to release a lot of old energies, or programming or whatever it is that it's time to let go of, whatever
Can you
your
explain
old
to us what
bullshit
Mercury
is.
in retrograde actually means? Because I'm pretty sure I don't even know.
Yeah.
I just know what it's crazy around here. She's like, Mercury. I feel like Mercury's been in retrograde for a while.
And we actually have 6 planets plus another energy in retrograde right now. And so that just means that that way of reading astrology is like from the viewpoint of the Earth, it looks like those planets are moving backwards because of where, the Earth's position is in relationship to those planets.
Okay.
And so
how does that affect energy?
every planet, basically brings different energies, whether it's, so Mercury is all about communication.
Okay.
And so when it's moving backwards, sometimes you may not say things the way you mean to, or technology doesn't work the way you want it to.
Okay, that makes more sense. Because she just always says Mercury's in retrograde, and we're like, we don't know what that means.
We don't know what that means, but something's going on, right?
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. Are we still in retrograde?
Yeah.
When does it end?
I don't remember when Mercury goes direct.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot. Everything except for 2 planets is
How often
retrograde.
does this retrograde thing happen?
Mercury happens a lot because, it's closest to the sun. So it has a much smaller orbit.
Okay.
But it's good because, then we get this opportunity to go back, reflect, release all of that.
Are you so positive about everything in your life?
I pretty much am. I mean, now, again, I go through my own stuff all the time, but I'm definitely built to be positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear myself saying to my clients all the time, and so then I say to myself all the time, oh, well, this is good because, when something bad is going on,
But that's still
let's
making
find
you
the opportunity.
Peacekeeper. That's
Yeah.
still your peacekeeper gift, right?
I'm still also very good at taking people into their pain and looking at their shadow. Okay. So, we're not glossing over anything that's going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, we can look at the positives, but we're not going to ignore the pain underneath because that needs looked at as well.
How did your past stuff that got you here, do you feel like you had to forgive that to really get into this? You had to forgive what happened and having to be that peacekeeper at such a young age to get to where you're so positive about stuff? And how did you do that?
Yeah, I definitely have gone through forgiving my parents. Because they were doing the best they could, of course, and mostly forgiving myself. I'm definitely hardest on myself. And so I've always taken on like, oh, I could do this better. I should have done that. And so really just forgiving myself and giving myself permission just to be human, because we're all going to make mistakes, and that's just part of it, right? So I think just really looking internally and doing a lot of that deep personal development and internal work.
So how does that play into your marriage?
My husband is really open to all of this, of course. And
is he more like, do they call him Father Earth at work or whatever?
No.
Okay. I guess that's my question.
He does wear essential oils sometimes, but no.
As far as he'll go right now?
He's a little bit more mainstream than I am.
Okay.
But I mean, he's super open to all of this. He meditates.
Does he do yoga?
Sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. More than I do sometimes.
Really?
Even. Yeah. But I think I have to often detach and let him have his own experience and not be like, oh, well, I could read your business for you right now, or whatever that is.
Yeah. What about do you guys, when you fight, how does knowing what the energy is play into that?
I think anytime we fight, I'm always looking within myself of like, well, he's just a mirror to me. And so what is this reflecting to me that I can learn?
Always. You're always doing that.
I'm always doing that. But because of the way I'm built, my lesson has also been, how do I speak up and use my words and stand in my power and hold clear boundaries? And so he's been a great person for me to get to do that with.
How long have you guys been married?
I have to think. We've been married for 7 years.
Okay. So for a while.
Yeah.
You've really learned. So if somebody wants to figure out their soul purpose, and they're just listening, they're not here in Kansas City, they want to figure out their soul purpose and how that's aligning with everything. What is one of the first steps you tell somebody to really trying to figure out who they are at their core?
Well, I always recommend getting a session with me so that they can truly see what that is. Because a lot of times the things that I'm saying to people, they resonate with and recognize, but I think we're not taught to look for what our gifts are and, what's great about ourselves. And sometimes we need another person to basically support us, show that to us. And then my homework for that is always now start to observe. Where are you doing the positives of this gift? And where do you need to give yourself more credit? Where are the negative sides showing up? And what are the situations around that? Like, what are the triggers? So I think a lot of awareness, a lot of journaling. I used to hate journaling.
Yeah. Well, can you say why you think journaling is important?
Yeah, I think, and now the way that I journal now, I'm not journaling every day. It doesn't have to be a chore. It should hopefully be a little bit more inspired, especially once you get into the routine. But I think it's important. It's almost like a brain dump. When you write it down, it's almost like solidifying it. That like, this is the truth, right? I am good at these things, or I will no longer tolerate this bullshit.
So it's more journaling it's not just journaling about your day. It's rather journaling, this is the stuff I'm not going to take, or this is the stuff that I've succeeded in today.
Right.
That type of journaling.
Yeah. Yeah. And journaling about your day is great too, if that helps, release. But
I recently found my diaries from when I was younger.
Did you?
I don't know how great that was.
Did you read them?
A lot of boy drama. A lot of boy drama going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Do you have children?
Yes. I have one son that's 4.
So as he grows up, how do you fight him following? Because a lot of people believe that oppression, that can be hereditary. 1, do you believe that? And 2, how do you fight that?
Yeah, I believe it can definitely be hereditary. My grandma, my dad, I think I definitely have that in my family. I really think being open and honest with him about it and talking a lot. We talk a lot about our feelings.
I would imagine.
Yeah. We talk a lot about being yourself. I think I really want to support him in just being who he is and not trying to squash any pieces of that as best I can.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely learned that lesson. I have an 11-year-old who is built to be an NBA player, but yet loves musicals, right?
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of people say, well, you should make him do this. You should encourage him to do this. And he just finished musical theater camp. So I definitely think that although we don't talk about feelings as much because I don't have as many emotions because we're built very different, right? Yeah. I think I just think in general our generation has become a little bit, would you agree that our generation has become a little bit more supportive and wanting our kids to be who they are?
Absolutely.
Because we were really fit into our parents tried to fit us into a box.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our parents come from the generation of children were seen and not heard. Mm-hmm. You know, and so they've had their own struggles to overcome because most of their parents were still, at least my grandparents were still like chopping firewood and hauling water from the well and shit like that. You know, so they didn't have time for feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, there was no time for, could you imagine? Okay, so if somebody wanted to have their energy read, do you have to be in the same room, in the same city? You can do this type of thing over?
Yeah, I actually always do the prep work beforehand because it would be boring for somebody to sit there while I'm
but even without meeting them in person, you could... And how does that work then?
Yeah, I just get their birth info. So almost like astrology, I need their full name, their birth date, if they know where they're born, what time they're born. That's helpful as well.
So that all plays into how your energy is.
Yeah, and so with that information, then I can tune in to that person.
So I was born in Kremlin, Colorado. Had I been born in Kansas City, my energy levels and my gifts could be different, you believe?
Could be.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I mean, and probably it wouldn't make that much difference as far as my work is concerned. And I do look at someone's astrological chart and their human design, and that stuff I think is different as like where the planets were when you were born.
Okay.
But I'm not an astrologer.
Yeah.
I'm just using that to support what I'm doing.
Okay. That's crazy to me. And I imagine your experiences would be different playing into those gifts growing up, right?
Right.
Okay, so let me ask you one of these final questions because this is a question Christian came up with and I just think it's great. Has there ever been an energy that has screamed at you to read it even though you weren't being invited in to read it?
Great question.
It is a good question, Christian.
Yeah. I would say yes, but at that fourth dimensional level that's very public.
Okay.
So...
Did you tell them? Or have you ever told someone?
Yeah, I mean, I would never approach it like as the crazy woman at the grocery store, right? It's like, I have to tell you, you know, yeah. Right? But... I mean, it was like somebody that I knew, and so it was much easier for me to go into the kind of more of the coaching realm and just bring up a few things and ask a few questions so that they can kind of see those things for themselves.
So, do you believe this is your life path? Are you much happier than when you were in corporate world?
Absolutely.
Could you ever go back to corporate?
No, I don't fit there anymore.
Yeah. What does the future look like for you?
So I'm just getting ready to launch a YouTube channel.
Oh, cool.
And hold more retreats and, you know, just continue to see what unfolds.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is the final thing you would like our listeners to know?
Oh, great question.
I came up with that one. So. Thanks.
Good job. I would say, you know, really just take a deep breath. Feel into your heart and follow where you are being led because only good things will come from that. Even if it's scary, you know, just following yourself and your highest excitement is always going to lead to something great.
One of the things I love that we talked about was in some part of my reading, you said that my intuition's very strong. And I found it very funny because most people have been telling me not to listen to my intuition, not to listen to my gut, I always call it. Yet I've realized that a lot of times when I have, things have worked out well. And so I found that very interesting that you tapped into that. So
Yeah.
I'm all about it.
Absolutely. And just like you said, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be like, oh, this is my intuition.
Yeah.
It's just your gut feeling.
Yeah.
You just know it, so go with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for this week's Cocktail Hour. Do you want to hear from your favorite local businesswoman? Do you know a woman in business who is shaking shit up? Send your recommendations to heygirl@cocktailhourpodcast.com. Be sure to follow us on social and subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to see you again. Until next time, I'm Erin. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Keep your class and your glass raised, and we'll see you at the next Cocktail Hour.